starts with a quiet moment in a small research office, where a human researcher sits at his desk late at night, surrounded by old reports, news clips, and notebooks filled with his handwriting. He is not famous. He is not a leader or someone who appears on television. He is simply someone who pays attention to details many others ignore. Over the years, he has watched how global powers speak about humanity, how they treat international cooperation, and how they talk in diplomatic meetings. What he sees worries him, but whenever he tries to explain it, people smile politely and move on. No one thinks his concerns are serious. He notices a pattern that grows stronger every month. Several major groups around the world begin discussing important decisions among themselves, while slowly pushing human voices out of the center. It isn't open or hostile. It happens quietly. A meeting is held without inviting certain human experts. A research project is continued without acknowledging the original human team. A council session ends without asking for humanity's opinion. At first, it looks like a mistake. Later, it becomes clear it is a shift in attitude. People talk about humanity as if it is predictable and passive, saying things like, humans won't protest, or they will adjust later, or they don't respond quickly anyway. The researcher watches all this silently, collecting proof and noting dates. He writes summaries and sends them to small offices, to diplomatic assistants, to anyone who might listen. His messages are detailed but calm. He never uses harsh words. He simply explains that something is changing and that the world is slowly beginning to ignore the human role in major decisions. He warns that this attitude is dangerous because humanity's silence or patience should not be mistaken for weakness. If humans stop talking, it won't be because they are scared. It will be because they are choosing to step back. Weeks pass and nothing happens. His reports receive polite replies like "Thank you for your concern," or "We will review this soon." But nothing changes. The researcher begins to feel more alone with each passing message. He wonders why no one else sees the same pattern. Maybe they do see it, but think it is harmless. Maybe they believe humans will always be present, no matter how often they are overlooked. He tries to push these thoughts aside, but they keep returning. One evening, after sending another report that will likely be ignored, he walks outside to clear his mind. The sky is dark, with thin clouds moving across the moon. The air is cool and still. He watches a plane cross the sky, a tiny light moving silently above everything. He thinks about how strange it is that the world is full of noise, movement, and endless activity, and yet the most important signals are often missed simply because they are quiet. Humanity has always relied on communication, on explaining itself, on sharing ideas, on building bridges. But now, when humans speak, the world seems to hear only half of the meaning. The next morning, he attends a public discussion where several officials talk about a new global project. They describe plans that will affect millions of people. Throughout the meeting, the researcher raises his hand, but no one calls on him. They rush through the agenda, mention cooperation, mention unity, and talk about the need for stronger alliances. But they never stop to listen. They assume humans will accept whatever decision is made because humans are known for adapting and staying calm. This assumption gives the researcher a heavy feeling in his chest after the meeting ends. He approaches one of the organizers and explains his concern again. The organizer listens with a polite smile, nods a few times, and then says, "We understand, but please don't worry. Humans are stable. They are peaceful. They don't cause problems." The organizer says this with such confidence that the researcher doesn't even know how to respond. He steps back slowly, realizing that no one actually believes anything can go wrong simply because humanity is involved. The world has grown too comfortable. He returns to his office feeling frustrated and tired. For the first time, he wonders whether sending reports is still useful. But his concern is too strong to let go. He opens his laptop and begins writing again, trying to explain everything more clearly. He writes about how dangerous assumptions can be. He writes that if humans ever stop speaking, it will not be because they cannot speak. It will be because they want to show the world what happens when their voice disappears. A silent human society would not be a weak society. It would be one making a point that words alone cannot express. When he finishes the report, he reads it twice before sending it. He knows many people will ignore it, but he also knows he must keep trying. He presses send and waits, hoping someone somewhere will finally pay attention. A few days later, one small diplomatic office replies. The message is short. It says they appreciate his thoughts, but believe the situation is exaggerated. They say that global leaders are confident in their strategies, and that humanity's role is well understood. The phrase bothers him. What does well understood even mean? It sounds like a phrase used when leaders want to avoid deeper discussion. The researcher sits back in his chair, feeling the weight of his own helplessness. He thinks about the world's long history, how humans have always been underestimated before major change. Humans tend to stay calm, watching carefully, choosing their moment. People think silence means agreement, but often it means observation. The researcher realizes that the world is misreading humanity again. Just like many times in history, when calmness was taken for weakness. One morning, he receives a call from a colleague who heard about his reports. The colleague is friendly but unsure. He asks why the researcher is so concerned, saying, "Humans are strong. They are resilient. Why worry?" The researcher explains everything he has seen over the last year: the ignored invitations, the skipped consultations, the subtle removal of human voices from important decisions. The colleague listens, thoughtful but still divided. He finally says, "Maybe you're right. Maybe people are forgetting how much human guidance matters. But what can you do? The world moves fast." The researcher doesn't have an answer. He knows he is just one person, and he cannot force global powers to listen. But something deep inside him refuses to accept silence as the final response. He believes humans deserve to be heard, and he believes the world will regret ignoring them. As weeks continue, the researcher's prediction begins to take shape. More councils hold meetings without inviting human experts. More projects move forward without consulting the human teams who design them. It becomes clear that many groups believe they can function just fine without human input. They believe humanity will keep adapting quietly, just like always. They believe nothing will change, but the researcher sees a different future. He senses that humanity will one day choose to stop responding, not out of anger, but out of choice, to show the world what silence actually means. And when that day comes, every empire, every council, every global power will finally understand the weight behind the quiet voice they ignored for so long. He thinks about it often, especially at night when the world feels still. He imagines a moment when humans decline to speak, a moment when the world suddenly realizes how much it depended on that voice. He imagines leaders looking around, confused, unsure, finally understanding the danger of assuming too much. The researcher closes his notebook and locks his office. He knows he cannot predict exactly when things will change, but he believes the moment is coming, and when it does, it will not be small or unnoticed. It will shake the confidence of every group that once dismissed humanity's presence. For now, he continues his work quietly, waiting, watching, hoping someone will understand before it is too late. But deep in his mind, he already knows the truth. If humanity chooses silence, the world will not remain calm. It will hold its breath, unsure of what comes next. Begins on a morning when the world seems normal, yet beneath the surface, small tremors of uncertainty are spreading. Several international offices have sent requests for human representatives to attend important discussions. Invitations arrive through email, secure messages, and official letters. Each request is polite, formal, sometimes even urgent. Yet every single one of these messages remains unanswered. Humanity, deliberately or quietly, has chosen not to respond. Those waiting for replies start noticing the pattern. At first, some assume delays are accidental. A secretary was on leave, a letter was lost, or there was a technical problem. But soon, excuses begin to fade. Weeks pass, and still, no response comes. Analysts start whispering to each other. They begin to question what they always took for granted, that humans would always participate, that humans would always provide guidance. The silence becomes noticeable, like a low hum in a room, impossible to ignore, even when people try to continue their work as usual. In one diplomatic office, a group of advisors gathers around a long table. Their conversation is cautious at first. One senior analyst clears his throat and says, "We have contacted human representatives for the third time. There is no answer. How do we proceed?" Another, younger advisor replies nervously, "It must be a mistake. Humans never ignore invitations. Perhaps there is a delay in communication?" The senior analyst shakes his head. "We have waited too long. This is deliberate. Something has changed. They are not responding on purpose." The room falls silent. The words hang in the air. It is strange, almost uncomfortable, because for years, everyone assumed humans would be predictable, manageable, and cooperative. The realization that humanity is choosing not to engage is unsettling. It challenges the very structure of decision-making in which these officials have always trusted. Outside of offices, on the streets, and in quiet research centers, ordinary humans notice the growing tension too. People sense confusion in world news broadcasts. Newscasters describe the missing human input in projects affecting energy, security, and science. International headlines hint at stalled treaties, paused trade agreements, and unexplained delays in global initiatives. Commentators debate the reasons for the silence. Some suggest humans are distracted with their own domestic affairs. Others suspect technical failures. Only a few voices, quiet and thoughtful, suggest the possibility that humans are choosing to observe and wait. In one city, a group of educators and scientists gathers in a library. They share articles, discuss the news, and analyze the reports of stalled meetings. One scientist says softly, "Humans are not being ignored. Humans are ignoring." The group goes silent for a moment, reflecting on the words. It is a shocking thought, because no one expected humans to step back in this way. Humans have always been the ones to speak first, to explain themselves, to provide guidance. The idea that they would choose silence feels almost like a challenge to the rest of the world. Meanwhile, in international councils, tension grows. Negotiators and representatives try to fill in the gaps left by absent human voices. Plans are drawn on paper, proposals are debated, strategies are crafted. Yet, without humans actively participating, uncertainty spreads. The more they act as if humans do not matter, the more they realize how reliant they have always been on human insight. Projects stall, arguments flare, and minor mistakes cascade into bigger problems. One evening, a diplomat walks alone through the corridors of a quiet government building. He stops by a window, looking at the city lights flickering in the distance. He thinks about the requests sent to humans that were never answered. He recalls the past, when humans always replied politely and clearly, even in times of disagreement. He remembers their patience, their reasoned arguments, their ability to balance strong emotion with logic. And now, none of that guidance is there. He feels a strange emptiness, as if a vital thread has been removed from the intricate fabric of the world. The absence of response begins affecting more than just bureaucracies. Scientific experiments that require human collaboration halt because no one can authorize certain actions. Trade shipments that need human approval are delayed indefinitely. Space exploration programs, once dependent on human coordination, face setbacks because critical decisions remain unmade. Even in areas where humans are not directly involved, their absence has a ripple effect. The world, once confident in humanity's role, now moves cautiously, uncertainly, like a sailor navigating through fog. Analysts in many countries start drafting reports to explain the phenomenon. One report, circulated among several offices, reads, "Humanity's deliberate silence is unprecedented. We cannot assume participation. We cannot predict actions. We must reconsider assumptions." Another, more urgent, states, "Global projects are at risk." The lack of response from human representatives is creating delays and confusion. Coordination without human insight is proving difficult. These reports create anxiety among leaders because for the first time in memory, humans are not following the expected pattern. They are no longer a predictable variable dot in universities, classrooms, and online forums. The topic becomes a subject of debate. Students and researchers ask themselves why humans would remain silent. Some suggest it is a strategic move, a way to demonstrate influence without confrontation. Others argue it may be a response to being undervalued, to being taken for granted. Regardless of the reason, the silence is reshaping perceptions. People are beginning to understand that when humans choose not to speak, the world feels it in ways far beyond words. The silence also begins to change human behavior itself. Ordinary citizens who notice the absence of formal responses discuss the situation with friends and neighbors. They talk about the growing sense of tension in global affairs. They reflect on how humans have always adapted and how much the world depends on their participation. There is a quiet pride in knowing that their absence, though unspoken, is having a profound impact in some emergency rooms. Power plants and communication hubs, workers realize the consequences of missing human guidance. Decisions that previously required human judgment now take longer. People double-check each step, fearful of making mistakes. Errors that might have been prevented by human oversight become more likely. Each delayed decision and small miscalculation reinforces the truth the world is slowly beginning to accept. Humans are essential, not just for strength or technology, but for thought, reason, and balance. One night, a young analyst sits at her desk, staring at a blank screen. She rereads the unanswered invitations, the reports of stalled meetings, and the messages that have gone ignored. Slowly, realization dawns. Humans have not disappeared. They are not absent because of negligence or forgetfulness. They have chosen silence. They have chosen to withdraw their voice. And in doing so, they have shown the world a power no one expected, the power of deliberate quiet. The more leaders try to interpret the silence, the more uncertain they become. Some wonder if humans are angry. Others speculate about unknown crises or hidden strategies. The truth, however, is simple. Humans are watching, waiting, and allowing the world to experience the weight of their absence. They are letting others feel what it means when one vital presence is deliberately withheld in a small office far from the centers of power. The researcher from Part 1 reviews the latest news. He reads about stalled projects, puzzled officials, and growing unease among global leaders. He feels a mixture of satisfaction and concern. Satisfied because his warnings are finally being proven true, but concerned because the world has not yet fully understood the lesson. Humanity's silence is powerful, but it can also be dangerous if misinterpreted. He writes another note, preparing for the next phase, knowing that observation is only part of the process. Across the globe, in capitals and small towns alike, people notice subtle changes in tone, behavior, and confidence. News anchors speak more cautiously. Leaders pause before issuing statements. Teams hesitate, uncertain how to proceed. Humanity's absence is no longer something that can be ignored. It is a shadow cast over every meeting, every plan, every decision. For the first time, the world realizes that silence is not nothing. Silence carries meaning, and in this case, it carries a weight that no empire, no council, and no organization can escape. As weeks turn into months, the pattern becomes undeniable. Humans do not respond to invitations. Humans do not provide guidance. Humans do not interfere. And yet, the world, despite growing tension, continues to function, but with caution, hesitation, and a sense of vulnerability. It is a world learning a lesson it never expected. That absence, when deliberate, can speak louder than words. In the quiet of night. As city lights flicker and offices remain open late, the world begins to change subtly. Leaders rethink strategies, analysts question assumptions, and ordinary people discuss the curious silence that seems to come from everywhere at once. Humanity is no longer a guaranteed participant. Humanity is now a factor that must be acknowledged even in absence. And this realization, uncomfortable as it is, begins to reshape thought, policy, and behavior in ways that no meeting, speech, or declaration ever could. The researcher leans back in his chair, watching the city below. He knows that the world has finally begun to notice. Humanity's silence is no longer a mystery. It is a statement. Begins as the world starts to feel the real effects of humanity's silence. What was once a quiet curiosity now becomes a growing tension. Governments, organizations, and empires that had long assumed humans would always respond now find themselves uncertain and uneasy. Meetings that should have run smoothly stall. Decisions that normally took days now take weeks. People begin to realize that humans were not just participants, they were stabilizers, guides, and problem solvers. Without them, even the most powerful groups feel exposed and vulnerable. In one capital city, advisors gather around a large table, papers spread out in front of them. Voices are louder than usual, and frustration is clear. We cannot continue without human approval, one official says. Every project depends on their input. Every plan requires their judgment. If we continue blindly, we risk failure. Another leans back in his chair, rubbing his temples. It's not just projects. Our reputation is at stake. If humans refuse to respond, allies will start questioning our competence. We have relied on their presence for decades. How could we have ignored this possibility? Across the world, scientists working on critical research face delays they cannot control. Experiments that rely on human expertise are frozen. Computers run simulations, but without the human insight to interpret results, the data is meaningless. Labs sit in quiet tension. Researchers talk in whispers, aware that small errors could have significant consequences. They all feel the same frustration. Humans are not responding, and the world is beginning to show signs of strain. In trade centers and logistics hubs, the effects are just as clear. Shipments that require human verification remain in limbo. Trade agreements stall because no one can finalize terms without human representatives. Even automated systems, designed to reduce human dependency, fail when unexpected situations arise. Each delay feeds uncertainty, and each uncertainty spreads further, creating a ripple effect felt by governments, corporations, and everyday people alike. Leaders begin to notice patterns that were previously invisible. They hold private discussions, away from public view, questioning assumptions that were long taken for granted. We assumed humans would cooperate, that they would always provide clarity, one diplomat admits in a quiet room. We treated their calmness as passivity, their patience as compliance. We ignored the fact that silence can be deliberate. Now we are seeing the consequences. Another adds, our strategies depended on predictable responses. Without them, we are blind in ways we never expected. Even international news begins to reflect the growing tension. Reporters, usually eager to explain and simplify events, now struggle to find words. Headlines read like questions. Why are humans silent? The world waits for the unanswered voice of humanity. Commentators speculate endlessly. Some suggest technical failures or political distractions. Others, more observant, begin to hint at a deliberate strategy. Perhaps, one anchor says cautiously, human silence is not weakness. Perhaps it is a message the world has yet to understand. In quiet offices, analysts study charts, maps, and schedules, trying to make sense of stalled projects and delayed decisions. They note that everything involving human input, from diplomacy to research to logistics, now requires double checks and backups. Mistakes are more common. Small conflicts emerge over misinterpreted data. Leaders who once felt confident now hesitate, realizing that without humans, even minor errors can escalate quickly. The weight of human absence is growing heavier with every passing day. Ordinary people, too, begin to notice. Citizens watch news reports and see glimpses of stalled initiatives, delayed aid, and confused leadership. Conversations in homes and cafes revolve around the absence of human voices. It is strange, one person says quietly, how much we depend on them, even when we don't notice. And now, without their guidance, everything feels off balance. Friends nod in agreement, sharing the unease that has begun to settle across the globe. In emergency response centers, the effects are especially clear. Situations that once required swift coordination now take longer. Human judgment, once taken for granted, is sorely missed. Decisions that could prevent accidents, manage crises, or coordinate responses are delayed. Staff feel frustration and fear, knowing that every misstep has consequences. The absence of humanity's voice, once invisible, now manifests as stress, tension, and growing uncertainty. In academic institutions, professors lecture about the growing consequences of human silence. Students listen, fascinated and concerned. Discussions range from ethics to strategy, exploring the idea that absence can be more powerful than presence. One professor explains, humans have chosen not to speak, and in doing so, they are showing the world a truth we rarely consider. Participation is a responsibility, and silence is a tool. When they withdraw, the world experiences the weight of what was previously taken for granted. As tensions rise, small incidents begin to test governments' patience and adaptability. A shipping error in one country leads to delays in multiple nations. A miscalculation in a scientific project halts an entire initiative. Negotiators stumble in their attempts to replace missing human input. Each problem highlights a simple truth. Humans were not just participants. Humans were central to the stability of every system, every plan, and every network. Their absence exposes hidden weaknesses that no one had anticipated. In private offices, diplomats and leaders reflect on their own assumptions. They admit mistakes quietly and without fanfare. They recognize that their confidence in human predictability was misplaced. They recall past moments when humans were underestimated, and now the lessons are repeating themselves. The difference is that this time, humans are not reacting. They are silent, patient, observing. The world feels uncomfortable because it cannot control the situation. In one small city, a group of humans gathers to observe quietly. They are ordinary people, not famous or powerful. Yet their choices matter because they collectively represent humanity's decision to step back. They discuss what is happening, sharing ideas about patience, observation, and influence. They agree that silence is not weakness. It is strength. By withdrawing their voice, they allow the world to experience the consequences of assuming that humans can be ignored. Meanwhile, In global capitals, leaders attempt to adapt. They hold emergency meetings to compensate for missing human guidance. Plans are rewritten. Projects are delayed. Teams work overtime, trying to fill gaps that humans once naturally handled. The pressure is immense. Every decision feels heavier. Every choice carries more risk. For the first time in memory, empires and governments feel vulnerable in ways they cannot control. The world's realization spreads further. Analysts in multiple countries publish reports emphasizing the same point. Human silence is deliberate, impactful, and transformative. These reports reach decision-makers who read them with unease. The truth is undeniable. Humanity's absence is not passive. It is a quiet, strategic presence that affects every aspect of global operations. People begin to understand that silence can be an agent of change. In homes, offices, and schools, discussions continue. Ordinary citizens realize that their own role in society, their own voice, matters in ways often unnoticed. They talk about responsibility, influence, and the subtle power of presence and absence. Many feel pride in knowing that their collective choices, even in quiet, can reshape the world. Even the researcher from earlier parts observes with a sense of calm satisfaction. He has watched this pattern unfold. He knew humanity's silence would eventually create tension and uncertainty. He reads news articles, reviews reports, and listens to debates. The world is learning slowly but surely. Every empire, every council, every organization that once assumed humans would always respond now faces an undeniable truth. Absence has power, and humans are proving it without a single word dot in the quiet hours of night. When offices are dimly lit and city streets are empty, the weight of human silence becomes almost tangible. Leaders lie awake, pondering decisions they cannot finalize. Analysts review data that remains incomplete. Citizens reflect on what it means when the world's most predictable voices choose not to speak. The air feels different, heavier, more cautious. Humanity's quiet influence spreads like an invisible force, shaping thought, behavior, and policy without a single declaration. Small victories for humanity are visible in subtle ways. A delayed project forces careful reconsideration. A miscommunication highlights the importance of human judgment. Leaders begin to speak more cautiously, aware that assumptions can no longer guide their actions. Even the simplest decisions carry weight, because humans have made their absence meaningful. The world is learning lessons that cannot be taught through speeches, commands, or warnings. Silence is now the teacher, and humans are the instructors. By the end of the part, the world has changed quietly but profoundly. Empires and governments feel uncertainty like never before. Every decision carries risk. Every plan is second-guessed. Humans remain silent, observing the effects of their absence. Their patience is steady, their intent clear. The world must understand that when humans withdraw, the consequences are real, immediate, and impossible to ignore. The researcher leans back, watching the slowly shifting balance. He knows that the world is beginning to comprehend the lesson. The tension, the mistakes, begins as the world starts to feel the serious consequences of humanity's silence. What was once a quiet curiosity and growing unease has now turned into real pressure. Without human input, the systems and structures that relied on their judgment begin to falter. Projects that should have moved smoothly are stuck. Decisions that needed human oversight remain incomplete. The absence is no longer subtle. It is impossible to ignore. In one major city, a government office sits in tense silence. Representatives from several departments gather, papers and digital reports scattered across the table. One official points at a chart showing delayed projects. "We cannot proceed without human approval," he says firmly. "Everything that requires judgment, foresight, or coordination is affected. We are losing control of the timeline." Another leans back, worried. This was predictable, he admits. We assumed humans would respond. We assumed silence meant consent. We were wrong. Across the world, scientific research centers are experiencing delays that could have serious consequences. Experiments in laboratories that require human observation or decision-making are on hold. Machines run automatically, but without humans to interpret results, everything is incomplete. Scientists gather in quiet groups, discussing the unexpected consequences of human absence. They feel a mixture of frustration, respect, and fear, realizing that humans were not just participants. They were the stabilizing force behind progress. Trade and logistics face similar challenges. Shipments that require human verification are delayed indefinitely. Supply chains that depend on human oversight begin to falter. Simple errors in calculation, communication, or prioritization escalate into larger problems. Even automated systems designed to reduce human reliance struggle to function without human judgment. Businesses, governments, and citizens alike begin to feel the ripple effects of what was once considered minor absence. Leaders in multiple capitals begin to gather for emergency meetings. The usual confidence in control and decision-making has vanished. Diplomats, advisors, and strategists are all aware that the world is experiencing a rare moment. The absence of humans is creating uncertainty, stress, and tension on a global scale. One advisor says quietly, "We thought humans were predictable. We treated calmness as weakness. Now we are learning the truth. Their silence carries power." International councils attempt to move forward without human input, but the results are imperfect. Negotiators argue over decisions that were once simple because they depended on human guidance. Mistakes occur that could have been prevented. Minor miscommunications escalate. Every delay, every error, is a reminder of how much humans contributed when they were present. For the first time, the world experiences the real weight of missing insight. In newsrooms, anchors and reporters struggle to explain events. Headlines describe stalled projects, delayed agreements, and uncoordinated responses. Analysts comment on the unusual global hesitation. It is rare, one says, to see the world function without human guidance. Decisions are slower. Errors are higher. Tension is growing. Humanity's silence is reshaping how the world operates. Ordinary citizens read these reports with growing awareness. Conversations in homes, cafes, and online spaces reflect a mixture of curiosity, concern, and pride. People begin to understand that silence, when deliberate, is a powerful tool. Emergency response centers feel the absence acutely. Decisions that previously required quick human judgment now take longer. Coordination between agencies is complicated. Every delay carries consequences that ripple across borders. Staff feel the weight of responsibility heavier than ever before. For the first time, they realize the importance of human insight, not just in expertise, but in timing, judgment, and understanding of complex systems. Even in ordinary life, the effects are noticeable. Energy distribution, transportation systems, and communication networks experience minor but significant delays. Tasks that humans once monitored carefully are now prone to small failures. Citizens feel the difference, even if they cannot articulate it clearly. They notice that progress feels slower, systems less reliable, and coordination more complicated. The absence of humans in key roles is now visible to everyone. In offices where humans still work behind the scenes, there is quiet reflection. Ordinary people, not leaders or famous figures, observe the growing tension and consider the power of their collected decision to remain silent. They talk about patience, observation, and influence. They understand that absence can speak louder than words. By withdrawing their voice, they are showing the world the importance of human judgment, collaboration, and guidance. Governments begin to adjust policies in response. Emergency protocols are updated. Delayed projects are reconsidered. Decision-making structures are revised to compensate for missing input. Yet every adjustment highlights a simple truth. Humans were central to the stability of every system. Without them, even the strongest organizations feel exposed, vulnerable, and uncertain. In academic institutions, professors use current events as lessons. Students discuss the consequences of human absence in diplomacy, science, and global coordination. They explore the idea that participation is responsibility and silence can be strategic. One professor explains, humans are demonstrating a truth often ignored. Absence has impact. It teaches lessons that cannot be conveyed through words, warnings, or commands. The world feels it because humans are essential. In one small city, a group of humans meets quietly to observe the unfolding situation. They are not leaders or celebrities, but their presence or absence is significant. They discuss the growing tension, the stalled projects, and the world's dependence on their judgment. Their conversation is calm, thoughtful, and deliberate. They understand the power they hold and choose to use it silently. Their restraint is both patient and purposeful. In another part of the world, leaders begin to feel real pressure. Every mistake is amplified. Every delay is a lesson in dependence. Decisions that once seemed routine now carry uncertainty. Confidence erodes as awareness of human absence grows. Even small errors in interpretation or planning demonstrate the extent of reliance on human participation. For the first time, the world experiences the subtle but powerful force of deliberate quiet. The researcher from earlier parts observes all this from his quiet office. He reads reports, watches the news, and reflects on events as they unfold. He has predicted this tension for months, and now the results are visible everywhere. The world is learning that humans are not just participants, they are a stabilizing force. He writes notes, preparing for what he believes will come next, the moment when humanity will choose to speak, showing the world not just absence, but the lessons that silence has created. In city streets, ordinary citizens feel subtle changes. Conversations revolve around caution, patience, and observation. People notice that decisions are slower, projects are delayed, and confidence in leadership is tempered. Even without understanding the full picture, they sense that the world is responding to something powerful yet invisible: humanity's deliberate choice to remain silent. International media continues to report the effects. Experts explain that the absence of human guidance is reshaping global decision-making. Economies feel small disruptions. Scientific projects stall. Diplomacy slows. Each event reinforces the growing awareness that humans are not passive participants, and their silence is having real, measurable consequences. At night, when offices are dim and cities quiet, the world seems to pause. Leaders lie awake, reflecting on projects they cannot finalize. Analysts review incomplete reports. Citizens discuss what they see unfolding around them. The world feels heavier, more cautious. Humans have created this tension not through anger or force, but through deliberate quiet. The power of absence is now undeniable. By the end of this part, the world has shifted. Governments, empires, and organizations understand something fundamental. Humans are not just participants. Humans are central. Without their voice, even the strongest structures falter. Every delayed decision, every stalled project, every small mistake reinforces a truth the world could no longer ignore. Humanity's silence carries real weight, influence, and power. The researcher leans back in his chair, watching the city below. He knows the world is finally learning a lesson he has tried to communicate for months. The tension, the delays, the growing uncertainty, these are proof that humans are not passive. They are deliberate. Their silence is not absence. It is presence in a form the world can feel but not fully control. And for the first time, every empire and every organization begins to understand the importance of listening, observing, and respecting the quiet power of humanity. On a morning when the world waits in quiet tension. For months, humans have chosen not to respond, not out of fear, anger, or negligence, but out of deliberate choice. Their silence has reshaped global systems, slowed decisions, and revealed how much the world depends on their judgment. Leaders, analysts, and citizens alike have felt the weight of their absence. Now, for the first time, humans decide to speak. The first message is simple, calm, and deliberate. It is not a declaration of anger or threat. It is a clear, honest statement explaining why humanity withdrew. In the message, humans say that they needed to observe, to reflect, and to demonstrate what happens when the world assumes their voice is optional. The tone is patient, firm, and thoughtful. It is meant to clarify, not to attack. The news spreads quickly. Analysts read the message multiple times, trying to understand its full meaning. Some lean back in their chairs, astonished by the clarity and simplicity of the statement. Leaders gather in emergency meetings, rereading the words and discussing their implications. For weeks, they assumed humans were passive, predictable, and always cooperative. Now they realize that calmness and patience are not weakness. They are choices that carry immense power. In one capital city, a group of diplomats huddles around a screen, watching the message arrive. One senior official reads aloud, "We chose silence not to harm, but to observe. We have watched as decisions were made without our voice. We have waited patiently while the world assumed we would always respond. Our absence was deliberate. Our voice is now returning to remind the world that participation is responsibility and presence is power." The words ripple through the room. Everyone pauses, reflecting on what they had taken for granted. The younger diplomats exchange looks, realizing that they had underestimated humanity's influence. Their assumptions, once unquestioned, now seem naive. For the first time, they feel the full weight of human decision-making, not in actions, not in confrontation, but in deliberate, patient silence. Across the world, ordinary people read the message as well. Citizens in cities, towns, and remote villages see the calm but firm tone of humanity's voice. They feel a mixture of pride and understanding. Humans did not shout, did not threaten, and did not act violently. They simply explained, with clarity and patience, why their silence had been necessary. It is a lesson in restraint, observation, and influence. Leaders begin to speak cautiously. Some apologize for underestimating humans. Others reflect on the consequences of their assumptions. "We thought silence meant agreement," one official admits. "We were wrong. Silence can be deliberate, thoughtful, and powerful. We have learned this the hard way." These admissions are private, but they signify a shift in attitude. Humanity's voice is being respected not because it is loud, but because it carries wisdom, patience, and insight. Scientists, who struggled for months with stalled projects, finally resume work with renewed clarity. Human guidance returns, and with it, coordination and judgment that were missing for weeks. Labs hum with activity once again. Researchers smile quietly, relieved to have the insight that was absent for so long. Every experiment, every calculation, and every decision now proceeds with the benefit of human thought and oversight. Trade and logistics centers also feel immediate relief. Shipments that were delayed for weeks are verified and authorized. Supply chains that faltered begin to function smoothly again. Even automated systems, which struggled without human guidance, operate more effectively as humans provide judgment and oversight. The practical impact of humanity's return is immediate, visible, and undeniable. In diplomatic circles, humans' message sparks reflection. Meetings are scheduled, invitations are answered, and collaboration resumes. Yet the tone has shifted. Governments no longer assume participation. They now recognize that involvement must be earned, respected, and valued. The world has learned a lesson it could not have understood through observation alone. Humanity's voice is powerful, not because of volume, threat, or force, but because it is deliberate, thoughtful, and aware of its own influence. In ordinary households, people discuss the events. Families talk about patience, responsibility, and the power of calm observation. Children ask questions about why silence can be powerful. Teachers explain the importance of participation and the subtle influence of human judgment. Communities reflect on the lesson that voice matters and absence is not always weakness. The story spreads quietly, influencing thought and behavior in ways beyond governments or organizations. Emergency services and coordination centers feel the difference immediately. Delayed decisions are now clarified. Plans resume with confidence. The stress of uncertainty, which had grown over months, begins to lift. Humans provide insight that machines and protocols alone cannot replicate. Their presence restored order, judgment, and the ability to respond effectively to complex situations. The researcher from earlier parts watches the unfolding events from his quiet office. He has observed humanity's patience, the world's mistakes, and the tension created by absence. Now he sees the results. The world is reading, understanding, and reacting to humanity's message. He reflects on the power of deliberate choice and thoughtful communication. Humanity's return is not dramatic or loud, but it is undeniable in its effect. Even as humans speak, their tone remains calm and measured. They do not demand obedience or submission. They do not lecture or criticize. They simply explain, clarify, and resume participation. The impact is profound because it combines restraint with authority, patience with influence. Leaders, analysts, and citizens alike recognize that the lesson is deeper than any single project or delayed decision. It is a lesson about presence, responsibility, and respect. News outlets continue to cover the event carefully. Analysts debate the implications of humanity's message. Economists note the immediate effects on trade and logistics. Scientists describe resumed experiments. Diplomats reflect on the importance of clarity, patience, and respect in negotiations. Citizens read, discuss, and consider the broader meaning. Every sector, every level of society, feels the influence of humanity's deliberate choice to speak after a period of silence. In international forums, humans resume participation carefully and deliberately. Discussions, decisions, and collaborations proceed with renewed understanding. Governments now approach humans not as predictable participants, but as partners whose insight, judgment, and voice must be respected. The change in attitude is subtle but real. Confidence is rebuilt, but it is now accompanied by humility, awareness, and caution. In quieter spaces, ordinary humans continue to reflect. They understand the effect of their silence, the lessons learned by the world, and the responsibility that comes with voice. They recognize that patience, observation, and clarity can influence more than anger, force, or confrontation. Their actions or deliberate inaction have reshaped perceptions, decisions, and behavior. Humanity's return is a reminder that influence does not require shouting. It requires wisdom, timing, and awareness. The world is changed in small but meaningful ways. Decisions are now made with respect for human insight. Projects proceed with caution, collaboration, and thoughtful oversight. Policies are revised to ensure that assumptions about participation are no longer taken for granted. The global balance of understanding has shifted, and the lesson is clear. Humans are central, their voice matters, and their absence is powerful. By the end of Part 5, humanity's message has been received, understood, and acted upon. The world has felt the weight of absence, learned the consequences of underestimating patience, and experienced the value of deliberate communication. Humans return not with demands or anger, but with calm, clarity, and a quiet authority. Every empire, organization, and citizen now understands a simple truth. Silence can teach, and presence can guide. The researcher leans back in his chair, watching the world respond. He knows that patience, observation, and deliberate action have reshaped perceptions and decisions. Humanity's return is not loud or violent, but it is transformative. The world has learned to respect the power of choice, the importance of voice, and the subtle authority of deliberate presence. Humanity speaks, and the world listens finally, wisely, and with understanding. As the world slowly adjusts to the lessons learned from humanity's silence and their deliberate return, the tension that had built over months starts to shift into careful reflection. Governments, organizations, and ordinary citizens all realize that the world is not the same as it was before. Decisions are no longer made automatically. Assumptions are no longer taken for granted. And the influence of humanity is felt in every corner of society, in major cities. Leaders hold meetings that are quieter, more thoughtful, and deliberate. Each participant now considers the importance of listening, observing, and consulting before acting. Discussions are slower but wiser. One senior official comments, "We have learned the hard way that we cannot take human input for granted." Their voice is not just advice, it is guidance that keeps our systems stable and effective. A younger diplomat nods, adding, "Silence taught us more than words ever could." It reminded us that participation is responsibility, and that assumptions can be dangerous. Science centers and laboratories are full of energy again, but the tone is different. Researchers discuss decisions with care, aware that their choices are no longer made in isolation. Experiments proceed with human oversight, collaboration, and thoughtful interpretation. The lessons of absence remain in their minds. Even the most advanced technology cannot replace human insight, judgment, and observation. Each calculation, each experiment, and each conclusion now carries an awareness of responsibility that had been missing before. Trade and logistics. Systems also feel the long-term effects. Processes that were delayed during humanity's silence are now optimized with careful human guidance. Mistakes that might have been overlooked in the past are corrected before they cause harm. Supply chains move smoothly, but every participant is more aware of the impact of their actions. Ordinary citizens notice fewer disruptions, but they also notice a new emphasis on precision, oversight, and human judgment. In international diplomacy, the return of humans has permanently changed behavior. Leaders approach collaboration with humility, understanding that assumption and overconfidence can have consequences. They plan meetings, strategies, and negotiations with patience and respect for the human perspective. Even small councils and local organizations adopt similar practices, applying the lessons learned on a larger scale. The world is quieter, more deliberate, but also more thoughtful and balanced. Ordinary humans continue to reflect on the events. They understand the lessons of silence and presence, patience and influence. Communities discuss the importance of observation, listening, and timing. Families talk about responsibility, respect, and the subtle ways influence works. Teachers share stories of the months when humans remained silent, explaining to students that absence can be as powerful as action. People feel pride in knowing that calm, deliberate choices can have lasting, meaningful effects. Emergency services and coordination centers remain vigilant but confident. Human oversight ensures that problems are addressed quickly and wisely. The lessons of absence are embedded in procedures, planning, and training. Teams understand that human judgment cannot be replaced by machines or protocols alone. Decisions are made with care, and mistakes are minimized because humans now actively guide processes while maintaining awareness of their responsibility. That comes with their voice, the researcher, from earlier parts watches. These changes with a sense of calm satisfaction. He has seen humanity's patience, the world's errors, and the eventual impact of deliberate silence. Now, he observes the slow rebuilding of trust, awareness, and respect. He notes how ordinary humans, not leaders or officials, have shaped the world simply by choosing when to speak and when to remain quiet. The lesson is clear. Influence is not about force or volume. It is about presence, timing, and understanding the consequences of both action and inaction. In city streets and rural towns alike, people discuss the changes quietly but thoughtfully. Conversations revolve around responsibility, patience, and the power of calm observation. Citizens recognize that humans' influence extends beyond governments, laboratories, and councils. Everyday decisions, communication, and collaboration are all impacted by the awareness that silence and voice are tools of power. The experience has created a deeper understanding of human responsibility in society. International media reports on the long-term effects of humanity's actions. Analysts describe how silence reshaped systems, slowed projects, and forced careful reconsideration of assumptions. Economists explain the benefits of human guidance in trade and logistics. Scientists discuss the restored coordination in research. Diplomats reflect on how patience and observation now guide negotiations. Every report emphasizes the central idea: humans are not passive. Their voice is essential, their absence impactful, and their participation transformative. Governments and organizations integrate the lessons permanently. Policies are revised to ensure that humans are consulted, included, and respected. Processes that once relied solely on automated systems now include careful human oversight. Decision-making structures emphasize listening, observation, and accountability. Every project, every collaboration, and every initiative carries the awareness that human input is not optional. It is crucial. Citizens, too, carry these lessons into their daily lives. Communities value listening and patience. Children are taught the importance of thinking before acting, observing before speaking, and understanding the consequences of absence as well as presence. Families reflect on how calm, deliberate action shapes outcomes. Society begins to operate with a deeper understanding of responsibility, respect, and thoughtful engagement. Emergency situations are managed more effectively because humans remain actively engaged, aware of the lessons learned during their period of silence. Mistakes that previously went unnoticed are caught early. Planning and response are more precise, deliberate, and resilient. Teams function with confidence because they know the importance of human judgment and its lasting impact. The researcher notes that the world has not only adjusted, it has improved. The months of uncertainty, tension, and careful observation have created systems that are wiser, processes that are more deliberate, and people who are more thoughtful. Humans have reminded the world that influence is not about volume or force, but about the deliberate, patient exercise of judgment and responsibility. Ordinary humans continue to reflect, quietly guiding projects, discussions, and communities. Their presence, now fully recognized, carries authority without arrogance, wisdom without aggression, and influence without force. Every sector, from government to science to everyday life, now functions with an awareness of the consequences of human participation and absence. The lessons learned during silence are deeply embedded in culture, policy, and society. International councils and local governments alike continue to adjust. They consult humans for guidance, involve them in planning, and respect their insight. Decisions that once relied solely on assumption now rely on careful consideration. Humans are no longer assumed to be predictable. They are recognized as essential contributors whose voice shapes outcomes. Every choice is more thoughtful, every plan more balanced, and every system more resilient. Even ordinary citizens notice subtle but meaningful changes. Projects proceed more smoothly, public services are more reliable, and communities engage with one another more thoughtfully. People understand the importance of their actions, words, and presence. Silence is recognized as a powerful tool, and voice is understood as a responsibility. Society becomes more deliberate, aware, and balanced. By the end of Part 6, the world has fully learned the lessons of humanity's silence and return. The tension, uncertainty, and errors of the past months have been replaced by understanding, respect, and thoughtful action. Humans have shown that influence does not require force, noise, or aggression. It requires patience, observation, and the deliberate use of presence and voice. The researcher leans back, reflecting on the journey. He knows that humanity's deliberate silence and eventual return have reshaped the world in profound ways. Governments, organizations, scientists, and ordinary citizens now understand the power of listening, the weight of absence, and the importance of responsible participation. Humanity has spoken, taught, and guided not through aggression or volume, but through deliberate, patient, and thoughtful presence. In the quiet of cities and towns, in labs, offices, and homes, people carry forward the lessons of these months. They understand that every action, every word, and every moment of observation carries significance. They recognize the importance of thoughtful judgment and the power of presence. Humanity's influence is no longer invisible. It is acknowledged, respected, and integrated into every system, decision, and relationship. The world, forever changed, moves forward with a deeper awareness of responsibility, collaboration, and the consequences of both silence and voice. Humanity has not only guided the present, but has also shaped the future. And in that careful, deliberate influence, the lesson is clear. Every voice matters, every choice carries weight, and the power of humanity is measured not only in action, but in the wisdom to know when to act and when to remain silent.